it's like rock or indie or something, you know. It's a completely different. It just like completely changes.
Yeah.
That was probably the coolest part for me.
So the reason I thought it would be interesting to actually discuss this one is because the way the chorus panned out was completely unplanned. And you know, Odette is, to me, she's like a Bjork level artist.
Wow.
She is not like Bjork, but in terms of like, her like sense of taste, her sense of universe, like her identity, her way of being herself is so strong. She's like, we made this record when she was 5 or 6 years younger than Bjork was when Bjork made her debut record. So Odette's like, you know, I made her first record with her when she was 18 and she was like 21 when we made this one.
Wow.
So I didn't produce a whole record. I mixed it all. I produced 5 songs, co-wrote 2 with her. So I didn't write this one, but I produced it. But basically we were working in Sydney and then, you know, just on this whole like have an adventure, she was like, I want to go to Melbourne. I was like, okay. And we originally had this idea that there was a song that she wanted to just record live and she's talking about missing her friends in Melbourne. It's like, well, why don't we like go to someone's house who has a piano and we'll like have a dinner party and we'll record you just playing it to them. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's try and make something that's like a really human moment on there. That didn't wind up happening. But we did go to Melbourne and we rented a studio for a few days and she wanted to get woodwinds in on this record, or clarinet. And clarinet was actually meant to be for this song that was live with the piano. What song is Wait For You is on the record. It's just like a little interlude. So if people are interested, we basically went to Melbourne to do Wait For You. And my friend Frank Titaz, who's an amazing producer, he did like all the Gautier and Kimbra stuff and one of the most amazing kind of thinkers about music out there. But he's down there and I was like, hey, Frank, who's good on clarinet? He recommended 2 people. He's like, this person will like read the charts and play like crazy. And this person's like a little bit better at just going off on something. So we got in this guy, Martin. And I always ask people like, do you have any other instruments? He was like, oh, I've got some saxophones as well. I could bring those in. And so he brought them in. And luckily, like, he knew her first record, so he was, like, really understood where she was coming from. He killed it on Wait For You. And then we were doing Trial by Fire. And we always knew, like, there was a chorus. But when it had been written, it just kind of, like, the beat kept going. It was just, like, now it's the chorus and the vocal melody changes or whatever. And we recorded Martin just kind of improvising down the whole track. So there's a whole extended outro on this song that wasn't there when it was written. But we went to the studio where there's a piano and we just got Martin to play a whole ton of stuff, and Odette and I were kind of like listening to him just free form across the track. We're going like, this shit's amazing. And I got Odette to just like free form across the track as well. But after he did all his clarinet stuff, I was like, any thoughts? I always like to ask people, any thoughts, anything you want to try? And he was like, oh, I had this idea on saxophone in the chorus, which is just like the da, 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 da. So he kind of played this one line and then Odette was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, and then she kind of called out like the stack to him. So basically we're kind of getting like, it's a whole bunch of saxophones that are just like stacked up like crazy. Or maybe he started, I can't remember if he started with the melody, but he just like had something on saxophone in the chorus that just had like, kind of energy
like
on
a tenor sax.
I think, yeah, I think it might have, maybe it was a tenor or maybe an alto, but it was more like the energy of him, like just playing the living shit out of this thing. Do you know what I mean? And then,
yeah, I do.
So then, yeah. And then we just like built up this huge stack and we are like, what the fuck? That is crazy. You know what I mean? Like I was thinking like the beat in the chorus was kind of similar once we had been developing it, because with our original amount of time we did in Sydney, we're kind of, I like to wireframe with an artist for like a day per song. So it's just like experiment with the tempo, with the structure, if there's anything with the songwriting that needs to be sorted out. And normally I'll kind of program out like a beat that like has the feel. It's not necessarily definitive, but it has kind of like a texture and a feel. So enough that you can basically build stuff on top of. We'll get like some basic synth parts. So you kind of have your backbone to record to. But I was just like, holy crap. And then when I came back to LA, I got on my friend Jasper Leek, who is an other Australian, and just got him to play bass, and it was like just fuzz bass on the chorus. And then he did like 4 years of like Jazz Academy bass in New York as well. So he kind of did the more kind of nuanced, noodly stuff through the verses. But I just always felt with this song right from
that was like more of the Pinot style thing that was going on there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But just from, from that very first sample, which is like, it's quite an iconic piece in classical music, that piano thing, it's like just got this whole like dreamy thing, and her melodies. Yes. I mean, the lyrics on this song are like really intense as well. So So I feel like we kind of like matched the like kind of half hallucinogenic, half lucid kind of intensity that the song needs, even if in its quiet bits it's quite intense. And then like the run out groove I really love, because it's just, just having moments where a song can really breathe and stuff is huge. And I think those moments are important on an album as well. I really got away from trying to put a moment like that in every single song. My songs all used to be 7 to 12 minutes long. And I kind of...
It's not sustainable in 2021.
Yeah, it is not sustainable. Well, it's also not sustainable across an album because it just gets exhausting. But, so I'm kind of really happy just with how that worked. And then the amazing thing as well was actually the label loved it.
Sick.
So that kind of worked out really well. But otherwise, like, everyone should be listening to Odette. She's really phenomenal. I love her to bits.
Yeah, love the shout out. Yeah, it's a great track. And obviously there's tons of great tracks. People should go find all that stuff. But before we close this, I do want to ask you one more question that I've kind of asked everybody on the show, and it's like, I know Travis has his closing out question, so we collide on that matter. So my question is more just like looking. You may have already answered it, to be honest, but looking back on your journey, was there something that you maybe did or didn't do along the way that you look back on your earlier self and be like, hey, Damian, keep at that. That's gonna do what you need it to do for your career, or maybe don't do that. You're holding yourself back. What would be that one piece of advice?
There's been times when I've leaned into it more deliberately, but my fundamental philosophy that I kind of like intuited quite early on was just like, make myself as useful as possible and offer to help without trying to impose my will on others. Which kind of ties in a little bit with patience as well. And basically by not getting, like, my goal when I was 15 was like, I'm going to be a record producer. But I didn't go into my first sessions when I was 21 being pissed off that I wasn't producing the record. You know what I mean? So what this all builds up to is like, you want to make sure that you're getting yourself into situations, but never underestimate what you will learn from situations, and understand that your goal is not a fixed place and there's a long journey to get there. And it is through going through that journey that you will become the person that you need to be in order to inhabit that goal. So in other words, if you say like, I want to be a record producer, I didn't really understand what a record producer actually does probably until my 30s. And I wasn't confident enough to truly inhabit what that role is. Most people think like a record producer has the vision and tells everyone what to do. And that's like not it at all. It is like a dark and mysterious art. Just dark in terms of that it's obscured. It's quite difficult. Fundamentally, all a record producer, well, not fundamentally, what they do is they deliver a finished record. And that might sound really simple, but if anyone has a hard drive full of unfinished stuff or can't get a collaborator, they'll understand it's a big deal. But fundamentally, let's TLDR it. Be as useful as you can without overstepping your bounds, but that is paired with let people know that you are interested. So basically, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to write to someone and say, hey, I really love what you're doing. I'd love to help you. Don't be worried when you don't hear back. Like when I moved to London, I sent out 40 or 42 CVs, heard back from 2 people. One person said no, the other person said, oh, actually, I've got a studio in my living room in Brixton. And I wasn't pissed off about the fact that I didn't get into Abbey Road. It was like, oh my God, I'm working in a studio in London. And then, you keep iterating from there. And even working with Guy, like when we started working together full time, that was after I'd been in that studio for a year. So we had a 3-day session. We got on really well. On the last day of our session, I said, hey, Guy, I'm trying to go freelance. Do you have any advice on going freelance? And he was just like, oh, amazing, because I've got all this stuff coming up and I'd love you to come and work with me. So unless
cool.
people know what you're trying to do, no one's going to ask. I mean, as a situation where like Bjork says, hey, do you want to be my musical director and come on tour? Like that is a lottery ticket situation.
Yes.
Like you can't plan for that. But you can get yourself in a situation where you help people out enough that they might think, hey, maybe he could help me with something else.
Yeah. I love that. It's gotta,
cool.
It's just being, like you said, and being in service, and like opportunity doesn't present itself. It's what's the thing that I'm thinking about? You definitely know what I'm thinking about. My brain is starting to go fuzzy at 10:30 p.m.
It's basically like you get lucky by being ready. kind
Yeah,
of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Or luck is preparedness combined with opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You never know when that opportunity is going to come, but if
Yeah.
you've done the work and if you've laid out that groundwork and planted those seeds,
Yeah.
some of those things will eventually sprout.
And I think, I mean, this is just,
yeah.
if we're talking like tangible advice for your listeners as well, especially those, well,
Sure.
not just early in their career, but
any tangible advice you're willing to
later-
share on Secret Sonics,
Okay.
we're happy to get it.
What are we waiting for 2 hours in to get to the one piece of tangible advice? Is basically just remember that like creative careers are non-linear. So let's say, for example, if you go into the army, I don't know all the army ranks, but there's like a clear system of ranks that you're going to advance up as your career grows, right?
I've been in the army, so.
Okay, right. Whereas if if your goal is like even a clear goal like mine, be a record producer, you don't, there are audio engineering colleges, but you don't graduate with a degree and then suddenly like, the tech companies come looking for the brightest graduates from audio engineering college to poach, you know what I mean? So this all gets into like that whole non-linear thing.
It's not the high finance industry.
Yeah, exactly. So you basically, a nicer way of putting that is like you never know what's around the corner. And funnily enough, like just before I started working with Guy, I had been in that place for a year and I was starting to think like, okay, I'm not quite generating enough opportunities here. Maybe I need to actually leave this studio, go get a job washing dishes for £8 an hour, save up enough to buy like an ADAT and a little mixer and go and record bands in their rehearsal rooms or something like that. So I was kind of thought that I'd hit a dead end, but then like literally 3 weeks later was working with Bjork.
That's insane.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like you never know where these changes are going to happen. And in an individual career, like I can certainly say for mine, you'll have periods where it feels like the phone is ringing nonstop. And periods where you feel like, oh shit, I'm old, I've lost it. I was cool when I was 29. No one cares about me anymore. I'm out of date. And so there's always just going to be these seasons, and kind of getting comfortable with that is huge. But again, if you can be in service to people, something my manager actually told me when I moved to LA, started working with him, brilliant piece of advice is like people are just looking for a solution. I think I came out of this like more British headspace where it was like, you don't want to appear like you're desperate for work or anything like that. And also, again, as I mentioned, like I have so much experience in all these different areas that I genuinely can write, produce, program, engineer, mix, whatever. I can kind of, I can do all of that stuff. But I felt like if I said I could do all that stuff, I'd be a bit like, someone who's new on the scene going, I can do anything you want. It's like desperate, just give me any work, please,
Yeah,
so,
right.
And he was like, but the fact
they're a noob if they say on their website, like, literally melodining, mastering, mixing,
exactly. So I was terrified of that. And he was like, but you actually can do that. But it was really like all that these people are looking for when you're going and meeting labels is they need a solution. And if you can handle everything their artist needs, they will be stoked. So don't be shy. And that was also a key thing, like, again, the not being afraid to put yourself out there. Like, British era me would be shocked to hear me speak now. Like, I've learned to represent myself. I will happily tell people, like, I'm one of the best audio editors on the planet. I'll happily tell people I can sit down and get the best out of an artist. I'll happily tell people my beats are fucking fire or whatever. Like you just gotta understand what you do well and just state it as fact.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing this in like in a hierarchical way. Like, the stuff I was reacting against when I was in New Zealand, when it was like everyone's trying to tell you that you suck. It's like, no, I can do this. Is it right for you or not? Then you can be really, truly relaxed about whether it's just the right fit of what someone's looking for. Plenty
with experience, you can say these things without like sounding egotistical and just being like, no, like I can help you with this. This is what I've been doing. And this is my skill set.
If you're young enough and coming, what you can say with absolute conviction, I hope, and that's what I could do, is like, all I care about is making great records. That's like all I want to do. And the few times I have actually interviewed assistants, it was kind of really interesting when I'd ask people like, hey, what's your goal? And this one person was just like, I just want a stable income. I was like, what the fuck are you doing in music? Do you know what I mean? Like, can you imagine a bigger turnoff if you're like going to have one person in the studio with you than I'm just looking for a stable income? If they had come in and said what I said, which is I want to make like the defining records of my generation, then it's like, let's go. And, then you're still going to like start entry level. But, but passion is something the real advantage of youth. And, I feel like I've had some ebbs and flows in passion. It's very high